Although we've been taught by way of religion that Genesis is the beginning of creation, the actual fact is that it's not the beginning of creation. And this could be simply seen in the Hebrew. When you read Genesis, where it says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." When we read that in the Hebrew, it reads, "Barashiv bara Elohim eth ha shemayim wa eth ha iretz." Now, when you just analyze those words in Genesis verse 1, you will see that Genesis cannot possibly be the beginning. So we take the word first, Barashith. And when we take the word Barashith, it says in the Bible that God created. It uses the word Barashith for creation. Now, that's a mistake there. The word for creation in Hebrew would be Khalaqa or Khalaq. In the Arabic, it would be Khalaqa. The 11th attribute of Allah would be Al-Khaliq, which is the creator. So this word denotes creation. But in Genesis, when they say Barashith, it doesn't denote creation. It denotes a reconstruction, meaning that something that was already there, that was being reconstructed. When we go further into this word Barashith, and we look at Genesis again, and the mistake comes in is with the language. When we read it into English and we don't research the actual script that is in, we don't get a full understanding. So for instance, you have in Genesis, when it says in the beginning, it really doesn't say in the beginning, it says in a beginning. Now, the scholars of the Bible or the translators, they translated it as in the beginning because they said it wouldn't make sense to translate it as in a beginning, because according to everybody, that Genesis is the beginning of all life form of creation, the planet, the universe, etc. But again, when you go to the Hebrew and you go to the vowels in the Hebrew and you read the Bible in the Hebrew, although the original Hebrew didn't have any vowels, just like the original Arabic didn't have any vowels, but within the in the Hebrew, you have a vowel called a shava. It's two dots that appear below the word, and sometimes it's vocalized or sometimes it's silent, as in the word midbar, which would be a desert. It means a desert. That's when it's silent. But when it's vocalized, as in the word mashal, which means to rule. Now, in Hebrew, you have three prepositions that work as suffixes, meaning that they're placed at the beginning of the word, just like the definite article in Hebrew is placed at the beginning of the word, it joins it. So you have for the definite article in Hebrew, you have ha, and this will be added to the word yom. Yom means day in Hebrew. So to say the day, you would say hayom. So when the noun is indefinite, these prepositions are normally vocalized with the shiva. And for example, you have ba bait, which is in a house, ka bait, which would be like a house, and la bait, which is to a house. So this was one of many beginnings, but it was not the beginning. Now, it doesn't make sense to the religious mind because they say, well, Genesis, it can't be a beginning, it has to be the beginning. But as I've just shown you, is that the very word barashif means to reconstruct. Now, when we go further into the language again, and we go into that word barashif or the word reshith, you have the word sith or seth in there, or sheath in there, and that word means to appoint, to anoint. Okay, but that word also comes from the Chaldean word for 6, as in the 6 days of creation. But you also find in there the word Seth, which was the son of Adam and Eve. Remember, Cain and Abel. You had Cain and Abel. Cain killed his brother, so they needed a replacement. And Seth was that replacement. So now, when you go to Genesis, you're actually seeing a replacement or a compensation, because Seth means compensation. So you're seeing a compensation. Now, what is the compensation in Genesis 1:1? Now, Reshith, in that word again, Reshith, you have the word Ros or Rosh, which means head or leader. You have then the word in the Wapik called Rashunat. Now, Rashunat is dealing with what is known in Egypt or in the Greek as the Ogdods or the Cheminu, which goes back to Egypt, and it's the records of creation. And in that creation, you have you have 4 sets of what you would consider, or is considered as Adam and Eve. Now, this takes us back to like 24 billion years ago, and it takes us back to a destruction that took place on this planet. meaning that this planet that we live on today, the planet is actually smaller than it originally was. It's like two to three times smaller than it originally was. Now, what took place in the solar system, which this word Barashif is actually pointing towards, is that there was a collision that took place in the solar system with what is called, you can call it the Crystal City, they call it the Nibiru, they call it Reis Menjet, or even the Bennu. Now, what happens is that there was a crash that took place that destroyed half of this planet. Now, this is also seen when you go into the word for firmaments in the Bible, and the word used for firmaments in the Bible is the word rakia. Rakia has the root word raka, and that means to pound, to smash the earth. This ties into the Sumerian records of the crash that took place between Nibiru and this planet, which was one time was also called Tiamat. Now, how does this tie into the firmaments? Because the firmaments is a portion of that part of Earth that was destroyed. This is what made up the firmaments, or your astral belt.
The surviving historical records of the Sumerians revealed the story of an intruder planet, Nibiru, which appeared out of deep space, drawn into the center of our solar system by the planetary pull of Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter. On an opposing orbital path with the seventh planet, a planet referred to in Sumerian records as Tiamat, Nibiru's new orbit around the Sun placed the two planets on a collision course. As they draw near, one of the satellites of Nibiru crashes into Tiamat, cracking the planet. Subsequent collisions smash half of Tiamat completely, breaking the pieces into what develops mostly into the asteroid belt. The other half of Tiamat becomes Earth.
So as you can see, that without having the knowledge or a knowledge of what took place before Genesis, then you would not have no understanding of Genesis. Now, when you go further into Genesis again, when we say Barashif Bara, Elohim, it says. Now, Elohim is a plural. So creation cannot begin with a plural. So by the mere fact that it says in the beginning God created, the actual word that's being used is the word Elohim, which is a plural. In Hebrew, we have the yod and the meme, and that denotes plurality. The same way you have the word Naphala in Hebrew. Naphala means to fall down. In Genesis 6, it speaks about those sons of God that came down and saw the daughters of men and went in unto them, or had sexual intercourse with them. Now, the word Naphala means to fall, which you get the word where you get the word Nephilim. And Nephilim ends with the yod and the meme to show you it's plural, those that fell down. So when you look at the word Elohim, Elohim is also a plural. You have Elohim, which is a dual. Just the same way you have in Arabic, you have Allahumma. And Allahumma is also is a plural, which is meaning many Allahs. So again, we look at the Genesis and we say by the fact that they're using Elohim, which is a plural, which really should read in the beginning gods, or these beings created the heavens and the earth, or made or reconstructed the heavens and the earth. And we go further as we read Genesis 1. It says Barashif bara Elohim F. Now the word F they leave untranslated when it comes to Genesis, but this word F means an agreement. It means consent. It's also in the Chaldean. In Chaldean, it's found as Auf, which means a token, a sign. But so it's telling us in Genesis 1 there was a consent that had to be granted. There was an agreement. And this will tie into John's in chapter 1 when it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word existed with God, or the Word existed with Elohim. So when you see that word in Genesis, F, which I leave untranslated, that's pointing again towards the agreement or the consent that these group of beings had to get from a higher God, or what you refer to as the Most High. Whether in Egypt they say Re, in Sumeria they say Anu.